program certification course. You can be seated, those of you that are coming in. For those of you that are already seated, if everyone could get out their books and have a notebook and a pencil, and of course you want to take lots of notes. These are classes to where we come through and learning to teach these things. We go through and we put a lot of marks in our books, and we do some backtracking, and we can bring up what we've covered so far, so we can put all these pieces to the puzzle together. And once again, we're in the acceptance unit. That's the second unit of the junior high series. It follows the character unit. And for everyone watching on Facebook, if you haven't, you can download the teacher's manual, and there's no charge. It's free. You can download it. You can print out a copy if you want to, and make notes on your copy. I know there's a lot of people overseas requesting books. Please feel free to download these things. Once again, there's no charge, and you can use them to help yourself not only become a better person, but help others become a better person. And that's really with what David started last week with chapter 5. It's very important, this chapter, because it's entitled, There's a Purpose to It All. And that's one thing we have to remember in our lives. There's a purpose to it all. And things like that can change in our lives with events, and as we become older, whether we're young people and then we become, maybe we get married and we have a family. We go from being sons and daughters to mothers and fathers to grandparents. And then we take a look at life around us, how much life changes and how much the people in our life change. And of course, we take all of the things that we learned that were positive. That's what the Peaceful Solution is based upon. Taking all of the things that we learned that is positive and applying that to the purpose of our life. And we'll get into it some more here tonight, but we're going to kind of put some direction to what we've covered thus far, because this purpose to it all, we really want to individualize this as a teacher, because once we individualize it to ourselves, we can much better individualize it to our students. We can do a much better job of helping them connect not only with themselves, but also with goals and also with perspective in life, and knowing that there is opportunity, there is possibility, and there is certainty where people put forth effort. If you can be turning over to LP5A, that's the first gray tab page of chapter 5. And this is where David, he covered this last when he was closing class last week. And of course, he covered the note to the teacher. We want to briefly just go back and touch a couple points so we can come up to date where he left off, and then we'll continue forward. And of course, the note to the teacher, if you notice the very first part, he read to us that one of the saddest experiences of teaching is to see students with potential, who are bright and promising, fall prey to negative conformity and peer pressure. And that is a very sad fact, because as a teacher, when you think about it, if you're a teacher, you were a student at one time. And of course, in the Peaceful Solution, we classify teachers as full-time students. You're always a student. All teachers in the Peaceful Solution are always students, because this education never stops. And that's one of the purposes to coming to class as teachers and students, is to further our education, to sharpen the mind, so to speak, and to expand our knowledge on how to make better decisions. But of course, as teachers, when dealing with students, as we are, it's always a very heart, crushing. It's always, it can be devastating to some points to see your students go through negative situations that they had the answers to solve them, but they didn't implement them into their lives. The purpose that they had for their life became blurred. And it's kind of like, I always compare that to my glasses. I can't see a thing on this page without my glasses. I can see all of you, but I can't see anything on this page. I put my glasses on, it becomes very clear, as long as I grab the right glasses. I'm known to grab the wrong glasses at sometimes also, and that makes it a problem. But tonight it's clear. But when we let that direction become blurred, we lose sight of the purpose, and we forget our goals, and everything becomes blurred to the point we just kind of start being carried away with the wind. Well, if you notice here, it says, however, without the understanding in their lives, Without the understanding their lives have meaning and purpose, an increasing number of children and adults are making choices that rob them of their future. It literally takes it away. It steals it from them, these choices, these decisions. And what do I mean it takes it away? Well, think about your life. And if you're older, you understand this more than someone who is younger. Someone who is younger, they feel they have their whole life ahead of them. I can do whatever I want to do. And that's true. You can. You should do it from a positive perspective. But as you get older, you start realizing, well, that's something I probably shouldn't do. You know, if you want to buy a house when you're 20, that's not a bad idea. If you want to buy a house when you're 85, well, if you've saved your whole life, but you don't want to go try to get a 30-year mortgage, not going to work out too well. But as a child or young adults, they can make decisions, as we'll read and recover here in a second, that can really affect them, and it's not monetary. It's not something that, you lose your job. It's much deeper than that. And if you notice here, it says, in our fast-paced society, it is no longer shocking that the number of children who become pregnant in their early teens is growing, and that alcohol and drug addiction continues to plague our youth. Especially with, as Certificaton has mentioned in these classes, and William has mentioned, with the fentanyl coming across from Mexico. And Certificaton spoke about a police officer who just came into brief contact with a small amount of fentanyl, and it gave devastating effects to his body. These are things now where you see on the news where people are selling drugs on Snapchat, Facebook, and other social media platforms to young adults, children, and parents are finding their children dead because one tablet of fentanyl has enough poison in it to kill not just one person, but 4, 5, 10. And when you watch the information about behind how this fentanyl is made, the cartels that make this, they wear full bodysuits, chemical gear. They don't even touch the stuff. And it's brought across the border for people to put into their mouth. They're making money from it. But the people that are actually producing it wear layers and layers of protection so it doesn't even come in contact with their skin. So think about that. The producer themselves are not doing it for a benefit, they're doing it for money. And they won't let it come into contact with them in any which way, shape, or form. And as classes go, we'll get into more showing these things. When we get into self-control about drug addiction and so forth, we'll get into much more of these things. But you have to consider this. If people that make something guard themselves against it, why should we even touch it? Well, it's plaguing our youth, but it's much deeper than what this book, which was written many years ago. Today, it's much more important that the minds of a child be sharpened for positive character. Notice it says, as educators and role models, that means we're teaching by examples, not just through what we say, but what we do. We can no longer be satisfied with teaching just the core subjects. And of course, that's known as reading, writing, and arithmetic. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. When we consider that HIV infections is growing fastest among people between the ages of 15 and 21, it becomes painfully evident that our educational system must do more. Now, today's society, it's not just HIV. You have HPV, which leads to cervical cancer, throat cancer, other cancers I won't mention or get into too much detail, but it affects the body all over. It literally causes the body to infect and pretty much rot. If you've ever dealt with cancer, it kills, and it starts pulling apart, and it starts sucking the life out of the body from inside out. And not just HPV. You have syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia. There's a whole plethora of STDs that now affect our youth. It's become now to where pregnancy is like, oh, well, that's not the bad part. Well, it's not the bad part. But we have record abortions. We have abortions taking place at alarming rates. We're the state of Texas, where we're at, where they're actually fighting to where do you determine there's life or not. Well, there has to be a purpose to everything. And of course, the peaceful solution doesn't just have the stance. We know through scientific studies, life begins at conception. That's not a question. It's only a question if you're looking to decide to eliminate something from your life. that's when it's a question. It's a question because someone was not responsible, or it could be where someone was put in a position. And we'll get into that much more. And when I say that, I only say that to mention now because people usually ask, what about abortion if you're raped? What about abortion if you're in a troubled pregnancy and it could cost you your life? We'll get into and cover that a lot more. Right now, we're talking about personal choices that people make that can affect them for the rest of their life. And then we're talking about choices that are made through lack of responsibility. But once again here it says we must work together, and that can never be more important in our society than what we see today, especially in communities. We must work together to combat the overwhelming number of negative influences that perpetuate our children's inability to make moral choices. Not just children, but also adults. We have to look forward to working together. And when I say look forward to working together, it means you enjoy the sight of those around you. You don't cringe because someone just came up to you. Find a way to enjoy everyone. You know, we covered, and David spoke in detail about how we need friends. Everyone needs friends. Well, there's a purpose for all of these things, as we're going to get into tonight. There's a purpose for it. And if you have a lot of friends, you should have less enemies. And really, you should get to the point to where you have no enemies. Enemies are not conducive to positive character. It's not something that we should actually look at someone as. And if you'll turn over to LP5C, we're going to review briefly a couple things about friendships and why friends are important, which was chapter 4. So looking at LP5C, of course, at the very top we see this is the lesson plan. There's a purpose to it all. That's chapter 5, starting chapter 5. And it says students will learn what it means to have purpose in life. Students will also learn that to achieve their purpose, they must be determined and focused. And that's a very key word. They must be determined and focused. They must also distinguish between positive and negative conformity. Now, if a young adult must distinguish between positive, negative, and conformity, that means they must be educated to identify what is positive and what is negative when it comes to conformity. So that puts more in our plate as teachers to not just assume that a young adult, whether man, boy, girl, or woman, whether they already know it, we can't assume they know it. We have to be diligent about rehearsing these things, not only for their sake, but also for ours. Now, here in the procedure, it says, Procedure 1, review the previous lesson. Of course, that was chapter 4, and it's called The Importance of Friends and Friendships. And you start by asking the following questions. So you're going to look to cause a discussion among your students, and you want your discussion to be focused about what the book has brought thus far. Now, they can bring in some other things as far as examples in expressing what the book has taught, but you really want to make sure that what they're pulling and bringing forth from their minds is stuff that you're testing to see what they've retained. And that's really what we want to do with our students, is make sure we've got a foundation we can keep building upon. Sometimes we have to go back and rehearse a little if it didn't quite stick, and redo those activities as our purpose and objective tells us to do. But we want to make sure that we're getting it and we're slowly building. It's not a quick thing. It's not something that where you pour the concrete pad and you put the roof on by sunset. 6 a.m. you pour the pad, right around sunset you put the roof on, you're done. It doesn't work that way. You can try it, but it won't work very well. So, like building a house, this is the same way we build our character. Notice it says, the first question you ask, well, who is a friend? Well, that's more than saying, well, John over here is a friend, or Dave over here is a friend, or Jack over here is a friend. It's much more than that. And look back to page 62. On page 62, this is what we're looking for. We want them to pull from the things that we've covered with them thus far. And on page 62, we read, who is a friend? And that's the very same question that we're asking them. Who is a friend? And on page 62 it says, a friend is someone who supports, respects, encourages, and accepts you as a unique individual. Now, that's very important because we're all going to be different. That's our personalities. And that's what makes us unique. Friends can come in all shapes and sizes and from all walks of life. Friends can come from all nationalities and ethnicities. It's important not to cut yourself off from getting to know someone because they're different. Keep in mind that No two people are exactly alike. We are all unique human beings who share more similarities than differences. You know, one thing I've learned in life, not only do you not limit your friends by color of skin or from nationalities, or don't limit your friends due to the rich or poor, don't limit your friends due to stances in society. One thing I've learned, never let language barriers limit your friends. Always be willing to get to know someone, even if you think you can't communicate with them, you can. Don't even let a language barrier. If you can't speak a certain language, learn how to speak enough to communicate. If you want to, because we're all part of the human race. And one thing I've learned, it becomes a very pleasant experience to start learning other culture, how things are done in other societies. We tend to think as America, well, everybody should have the same purpose we have. As Americans, everybody has the same access to everything we have. That's not true. That's not true at all. When you start seeing other nationalities and ethnicities, a true friend is someone that realizes, you know, this program works in all walks of life. No matter what nation you're from, how rich or how poor, no matter what you have or have not, this program will work if the individual themselves educate themselves and implement it in their lives. And the Peaceful Solution has proved time and time again it can surpass any language barrier. It can be accomplished. And it's a program that's very diverse because, once again, a friend, as we discussed many times before, anyone that's part of the human race, any human can be a friend to another human being. You know, we talk about dog as man's best friend. Well, why are they supposed to be man's best friend? Well, that's because a lot of people have said that the study of dogs, you know, you can get mad at your dog and smack it, which you shouldn't do that. You should never abuse your animals, and he'll come right back to you. You can forget to feed him or water him, and he's still jumping up and down when you come home, and he's so glad to see you, even though you know you didn't do what you're supposed to do to take care of him. Well, dog might be man's best friend, but man is not dog's best friend in that situation. Well, we need to become, man's best friend should be, you know, your fellow man. That should be your best friend. Watching out and caring, that's the purpose. Caring for their best interest. And we should truly care for the best interest of everyone because, once again, a friend is one who supports, respects, and encourages you. That's what they do. And remember the deciding factors to being a friend over here on the page 63. And that's what we go through when we consider what a friend, you know, really is and how we're going to implement that friend into our lives. And then back over to page 62, notice the choosing of friends. It says the importance of choosing positive friends cannot be overstated. The importance to choosing a positive friend, once again, cannot be overstated. People with immoral principles and negative character as friends can influence you to make choices that you could regret for the rest of your life. You know, there's no reason for you to, many people can have, they can see a purpose. Well, my purpose, first thing I want to do is graduate high school. And then I want to go to college, or I want to start a business and learn a trade. There's a lot of people with those goals. In fact, 2.2 million people right now that had goals and purpose that are sitting in prison right now. And their purpose in life now is to get from one day to the next. And when you think about how the purpose in life can be very blurred whenever opportunity is taken away. And a lot of times we take that opportunity away ourselves. Opportunity is always there before us when we choose to take hold of it. But once again, remember, friends support each other in building positive moral character. That's what they do. And with that, with what your students give feedback to, kind of tie that together. And looking back here to LP5C, notice the next question is, what positive traits should you look for in a friend? Well, notice it says someone who exhibits positive moral character traits, and this is very important, who is a great listener and who is respectful. You know, when we go to our friends, we always want someone to listen to us. But how do we listen to our friends? Are we as great as a friend as we want our friend to be to us? You know, if a friend comes to you and they're like, you know, I had my day didn't go too well, and I really thought this was going to work out and it didn't go very well, and I'm trying to figure out how to do this. And your friend looks at you and goes, "Oh yeah, did you see the football score tonight?" Didn't even know there was a football game. No, I had problems. "Oh yeah, you should have seen it." That's not really someone you would consider a great friend. They're not listening. Turn back over to page 48 and 49. Because this is something that's very important. When we say we need to find friends with positive moral character, remember, we're not born with these things. We're taught these things. They're skills, and they have to be developed. We have to work at them. And if you notice on page 48, at the very top of the page, it says, listening is a skill that those who are wise will practice, develop, and nurture. It's not something we learn to do overnight. I'm really thankful. I have a lot of friends that are great listeners. And I have some friends that listen so well, I look at them and I think sometimes, man, I really would like to develop the ability to listen as well as they do. They will not even speak until you're finished talking. And that's one thing that I admire, and I would like to be more like people like that, because I tend to speak fairly quickly when I need to slow down. And I have friends that I've known for years, and they have the ability to listen very thoroughly. And that's something that as a teacher, and these people are also teachers of the Peaceful Solution, they teach me every day just by interaction with them. And that's something that's very important to have, because notice here, someone who is wise is quicker to listen than to speak. We talked about the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowing what to do and doing it is two different things. Knowing what to do, well, that's having knowledge. The actual application of that knowledge, that shows wisdom. And then notice here, listening helps us to communicate. And we're talking about friends, and we're talking about how we communicate, how we build these friendships. And if you look at the second sentence here, it says, on the very first paragraph, it says, communication is more than just talking. We show our acceptance of others and our willingness to interact positively when we take the time to really listen to what others have to say. We show we care. Believe it or not, listening is not as simple as it seems. Listening is actually a very important skill that has to be practiced. And you look over to page 49, at the very top it says, when we really listen to people, we're not only hearing the words, but also their tone of voice. If you're ever in a conversation and you're talking to someone, and people have to elevate their voice to get above yours, and then you both start elevating your voices to get above the other, there's no wisdom in that conversation. None at all, because neither one of you are listening. If someone you're trying to talk to, they're raising their voice, and you can't get a word in edgewise, you're not really having a conversation. And sometimes, as we've talked before, you have to walk away from it. Take time to breathe and then come back. But this listening skill we're talking about, notice here the very last sentence, it says, in other words, we listen with our ears, eyes, and hearts. This is called listening with empathy. Listening with empathy simply means to listen to gain a true understanding of what you're being told. It means putting yourself in the other person's shoes and walking a mile in them. Not only is listening a choice, that's very important, listening is a choice, but it is an effective skill that will serve you well into the future. To really listen to someone requires having the right attitude. And that's very important, because if you come in with the wrong attitude, that can be very detrimental. You must want to hear and understand what that person is saying so that there can be no misunderstandings. That requires your full attention. And you might be thinking, well, why is it so important that we go back and cover listening? Because you're teaching your students. And if you don't encourage them and help them to develop the ability of listening thoroughly and carefully, they'll miss that tree when it falls. And you'll find yourself going back to try to recover again and again and again. And as teachers, we have to realize we want our students to listen. That's the purpose. Remember, we're teaching. The words from our mouth as teachers goes to the ears of students, and the purpose is educating for positive character. But as teachers, we can never assume, well, they should already know to listen. That's not being fair. We've already discussed in the peaceful solution that that's a skill that's taught. It's developed and it's nurtured. So remember that, because that's how a teacher is a friend to a student. They actually seek out to help them to be better people. And students do that for teachers also. We have students as teachers in the peaceful solution that help us become better people every day. And as teachers, we help each other become better people every day. Because once again, there's a purpose to it all, and we all have a purpose that we want to fulfill. In the peaceful solution, it's to make the world a better place, a more peaceful place. And the whole reason of setting aside times in our lives, it's definitely not to form a class, stream live classes, and say, we know it all, listen to us. No, we're trying to say we want to learn it all, we want to develop it all, and we want to learn to make it work in our lives and show you that can work in yours also. And we can tell you what it's like to fall and hit hard times and make mistakes and make bad choices. We can do that. But if we did that, we'd spend the whole hour telling you what we did wrong. Well, we want to tell you how we learned how to do it right. And that comes from the influence of a purpose. And when you think about this, we'll get into this as we continue, but when you think about how powerful someone who follows their purpose in life, and they apply that purpose in life, first as a student, then as a teacher, those people leave legacies. And they continue for enormous amounts of time. In fact, they never stop as long as people carry out those legacies, that purpose, those goals. It never dies. It always continues on. Now, if you look here at Procedure 2, it says, tell students they will learn there is a purpose to life of every person. So tell students they will learn there is a purpose to life in every person. Tell students they will also learn that having purpose in life will help them avoid conforming to negative standards. So we want to have the students to turn over to page 87. That's after we discuss the first two in Procedure 1, those two questions. Briefly discuss them, but let the students have time to talk about it. So we're going to turn over to page 87 in our handbooks and read the introduction. So turning over here to page 87, the very first thing we see is a thought cloud in the very top, and it says, potential in our youth without moral direction and purpose is much like a derailed train. You can have all the desires to do something you want to when you're young. And when you're young can be, it can be 10, 15, 20, 30, 40. You're never too old to learn. You're never too old to have some things pointed out to us. We always should have the attitude of someone can give us some direction, and that's always needed. But without this purpose and direction of morality, it's like trying imagine a train trying to go down from one point A to point B, and it derails. Do you know how much work it takes to get that train back on? It's not like you pick it up and set it down. Think of all of the work. You have to unload everything, you have to realign everything, and then you get it back on track. Well, our character's the same way. Sometimes we get so derailed, there's a lot of deconstructing that has to take place in our lives to refocus the purpose and objectives that we had to begin with so we can start realigning those things so we can start moving forward again. Sometimes we get so derailed, we have to stop, get it all organized, and then roll back a little bit, and then we can start moving forward again. But sometimes in our lives, we think everything should always be moving forward very quickly. It can move that way if our trains are running smooth down the track. But life comes up with very different obstacles. And sometimes they're not obstacles at all. Sometimes things we think are obstacles or roadblocks are actually doors that open to a greater path. And we see that. Well, here in chapter 5, there's a purpose to it all. It says, to have purpose in life means to have positive direction in which to grow and mature. Knowing your purpose helps you to know what you want to do with your life. When you think about the preface of the Peaceful Solution, and you think about the author of the Peaceful Solution, Yisrael Hawkins, and always remember, as a young man, his father gave him purpose by saying, son, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Never get even or fight back. Now, that was mentioned in his youth during, just a brief time after the Dust Bowl in 1930s, a time of having nothing, where people felt they had to fight for everything. economy was bad, but yet he told him, don't do these things. And then from those words, you see all of this information brought forth through a person that took those words and implemented those few small words into their life. And the implementation of those words go beyond borders of the United States. They go all the way around the world. And the purpose that the author has is to educate everyone in how to make life a better way, how to be a true friend to people you've never met. You know, we think about in society friendships, and we say you can make friends all around the world, and we should have a purpose of making friends. A friend doesn't fly a drone and drop a bomb on you from the other side of the planet. That's not a friend. A friend doesn't steal your oil. A friend doesn't raid your villages and rape your wives and molest your children. That's not what friends do. Friends guard and protect each other. Friends watch out for each other. That's part of our purpose in life, that everyone enjoys life. Well, I ask everyone that's watching, an old saying that we have in the Peaceful Solution, are you getting what you want out of life? Because if you're not, why? Reevaluate it. If you're not succeeding in your purpose, your goals, why? Well, knowing your purpose. Turn over to page 11 and rehearse a little bit of what our purpose is. Knowing our purpose. Page 11, of course, knowledge is power. And on page 11, notice it says, taking your education seriously is another way you can demonstrate that you are a unique individual with moral potential. We have to take the education seriously. And I know, I'll be the first one to admit, when I was in school, I didn't take it seriously. All I wanted to do was play sports. That's my goal when I went to school. That's all I thought about. But now that I'm older, I would love to go back with what I know now and do it all over again. I don't get that opportunity. I get to start all over again, but I don't get to go back. I don't get that time back. That time is gone. I still have opportunity, as I've learned and other people have learned, if you're willing to humble yourself, as we learned as a positive character trait, and go back and start over from the beginning, you don't get the time back, but you can still get the education. And that purpose can still be there. Time is something, once it's gone, it's spent. And we have to use our time wisely, and we'll get into that. But we have to have purpose in everything. Positive purpose. But notice here it says you have a responsibility to continuously pursue positive moral ways to improve yourself. And getting a sound education is one way you can do this. Well, notice here it says, in addition to your basic subjects of English, social studies, and mathematics, and science, a sound moral education will assist you in being aware of what is going on in your community, nation, and world. And that's what we just spoke about when we went back and rehearsed what David covered in the note to the teacher. There's more needed than just the basic core subjects. Character education, education in morality, will help us to have a purpose in life that brings no harm to ourselves, someone else, or the environment. Also look over to page 33. Because we tend to think that in this purpose in life, that someone else messed it up for us. So I could have had so much better life if that person would have left me alone. I've heard that said, but I've never really seen it come to fruition. I know I felt that way when my parents were correcting me all the time, but now I'm very thankful they did. It says, make a difference, make a choice. Now that you know how damaging hatred and intolerance are, you have the responsibility to share this knowledge with others. Well, how do you know how hatred and intolerance, how damaging they are? How would you know? You have to be given that knowledge. You have to be taught. You have to be educated. That comes through moral education. Well, where did that come from? That came from a teacher whose purpose was to educate in morality. Now, imagine if a teacher who they want their purpose to educate in morality, that's what it's supposed to be, and they show hatred and intolerance to other people. That becomes very damaging to the mind of a person who's looking for a purpose in their life. to be insulting, to be demeaning, to make someone think there's no value in their life. You know, that's something that we see every day in society. You see it on the news every day. And people have to try to recover from that. Someone derails their train. Well, you don't see that with teachers that are focusing, that are trying to make life better, not only for themselves, but also for others. Looking over to page 37 real quick also. And this, I'm just wanting to get us into our mind before we get started. In page 37, it says it's all about forgiveness. And notice it says another important aspect of dealing with intolerance is being willing to forgive others when they are intolerant toward you. Because having purpose of education, there's going to be some curveballs and pitfalls along the way. There's going to be some obstacles that arise. But notice, if you have experienced intolerance in any form, your first reaction might be to feel hurt or disappointed, or you might have thoughts of revenge. Dealing with your feelings of hurt and disappointment appropriately by taking your feelings and hurt of disappointment appropriately by taking to a trusted adult or friend. You must learn to forgive. Forgiving others who have wronged you, it might not be the easiest thing to do, but without this very important character trait, you will hurt, and disappointment can turn into anger, resentment, and hate. So as teachers of the Peaceful Solution, why are we putting all this together? In this part, there's a purpose. Because if we as teachers, striving to be teachers with this purpose in life, if we allow intolerance and hate and separation to build in us, there's no use to carry on to this part. We need to go back to the beginning and start all over. But now if we recognize those things, that, you know, I've got that in me. I need to be a better person in this. Then our train is back on track. Now we can move forward again. Because trying to move forward when your train's off track, it just makes a bigger mess. And you have no success in that. And we have to learn, as the Peaceful Solution taught us in the character unit, when we start looking into society on how to make it a better place, the first place you look is in the mirror. You don't look at other people that, oh, I'm so much better than that person. If that person was like me, the world would be a better place. Well, that's a sign you need to not only look in the mirror, but go back to the very beginning. Because you need to erase your way of thinking. It's been polluted. But turn back to page 87, and considering the things we've covered thus far, notice it says, how can you tell if there's a purpose in someone's life? You know, sometimes through people having depression, people suffering from things that have occurred in their life, can be devastating. You can see they have purpose, but they've forgotten what that purpose is, or it becomes clouded. Kind of like when I said I take my glasses off, it gets blurry. They can still kind of see the purpose, but it's not very clear anymore. And they just need someone to clear it back up for them again. And that doesn't come through, you know, what's wrong with you? You get up on the wrong side of the bed today? Well, you knew what you were doing yesterday. You must have lost it today. That doesn't help. Helping somebody refocus, remember we talked about with empathy. Listening with empathy and talking with empathy. Using empathy. Helping people to grow. Because we're going to need it too. We're not beyond needing help. We all need help. There can be situations that arise in life that as an individual can be extremely difficult to conquer. But as a community, you figure it out and you move forward. Because you remember what your purpose was. And you don't let anything fall. You move forward with it. Well, continuing on, it says, look to see if they are motivated and determined to accomplish things. You know, and once again, you're talking about goals and your purpose. Your goals and your purpose. People with purpose strive to learn all they can about a particular subject so they can know best how to proceed. This requires education, not just in a classroom, but also in real-life situations. Now, that can be a challenge because in a classroom, you know, we used to say a classroom was a controlled environment. If you ask teachers today, they will tell you it's not very controlled. It's kind of out of control. But when you think about a classroom setting, the ideal classroom setting, you speak, students listen, you get feedback, you get interaction, people learn. That's nice. Life's not so easy. Life gives curveballs and pitfalls. Real life situation, you can have heartache and pain, you can have devastation. You can have things to where you felt today you were on top of the world. Tomorrow, my world is totally crumbled and gone. But your purpose in life really hasn't gone anywhere. Your purpose is still the same. And everything you need to accomplish your goals is still there. And we have to keep that focus, because these real life situations, that is the test of our character. That's the test of how well we've developed what we're learning. That's what brings us through to let us know, are we as well off as we think we are in our character? Or do we need to work some more? Well, we're always going to need to work some more. But sometimes the muscle's not as strong as you think. If you think you can pick up the car, but you really can only pick up the tire, that can be some information you might need to know one day. But notice it says it's up to you to determine your purpose and to make choices that will help you succeed in achieving your purpose. So it's up to us. We all have to make that choice. I can't make a choice for you, and you can't make a choice for me. Now, we can help and assist each other in making better choices, but in the end, the choice is all up to us. Notice it says, unless you understand that your life has purpose, you can easily dismiss the effect that you have on the lives of others. And we think about, as they say, giving care to the wind. It's kind of like if you've ever worked with, try to think of something that would be something. You want to get to your students. You want to connect with them. Usually when they're teenagers driving a car, that's everybody wants that. And there's a purpose to it, and I know that there's young adults that sometimes they want to learn to drive. And there's a purpose for the P and the N and the D that's there on the gear shifter. Park means park, neutral means neutral, and drive means drive. And sometimes when people, they get to where they're going, they're new driving, they pull up in the driveway and they turn the car off and they get in and, I did it, I succeeded. And then the next person goes out to get in the car and they go to crank it and all of a sudden the car lunges forward. What in the world? Oh, it's still in drive. That can have devastating effects, but there was no wrong intention. And the effects that we have on someone, well, what do you do from that point? Do you go in and tell someone, are you so ignorant you can't put that car in park? I've experienced that before. And I remember sitting one time in a parking lot for about 10 minutes trying to figure out why my car wouldn't crank, but it was because I had it in gear. I didn't have it in park. I see some friends we went through that before in San Antonio, and man, we had a great time that night trying to figure out how to fix something. But we were used to everything breaking down, so we didn't know what had broke that time. We were just used to everything breaking down. And it became where most people would think that breaking down on the side of the road was a bad thing. It became an adventure to us. We couldn't wait to see what was next. We hope it didn't cost much, but it actually became to where it didn't matter what broke. We just fixed it. And we were all teaching character education. That's what we were traveling to do. And I have no doubt the focus of what turned that to be to where, we break down, we fix it. We'll figure out what it is. We'll get it done. Because our purpose was to go teach character education. And you can't have much of a purpose when you have big signs on the side of a motorhome about character education and all the positive things, and you're beating and kicking and cussing at your motorhome. That's not a great example. And we've learned through life that the purpose was to get to A to B. And whatever it took us to do that, that's what we did. Well, where did we get that purpose? Through education. Notice it says, without the appreciation of just how significant you are to your family and friends, you might begin to feel as your life has no direction or values. Never think of your life as meaningless or unimportant or useless. Everyone has something to offer and contribute to the lives of their family, friends, and society as a whole. You can do whatever you set your mind to do. And you think about, well, I only do this. It's so unimportant. This is all I do. You think about that. Here at the Peaceful Solution headquarters, when you come onto the the land or the grounds of the facility, you see how neatly groomed and how clean and everything is in its place. And it's a really nice place to come to. And then I go to other countries, and there's countries that I go to that even in the main towns, trash is everywhere. And you really wonder, do they even clean up here? Do they pick up the trash? I remember going to a country down in the Caribbean. We had really great friends there. And we went through the capital. And our purpose was education on being there. And one of the people that we had never met physically, only through the internet, for many years we knew these men. And they were so excited when we landed in Kingston. And they were saying, this is our capital. And these guys, I tell you, they're great. They're still great friends to this day. Really great people. And as we're going through, I noticed me and the other friends I was with were looking around like, oh, this is not the pictures I've seen on the internet of Jamaica, but I sure can't wait to see what the pictures we've seen on the internet look like. And as we're going through the capital, I would never imagined it to look like that. And the further we went, it's kind of the same way. You know, but you did go by houses that were really neatly kept, but the capital itself was just trash everywhere. And I go to communities in other countries, and one of the things that always amazes me is the amount of trash that is everywhere. And you kind of think, does no one think that cleaning this up would be better? And I've learned you have to be careful how you say that, because some people, if you say, hey, why don't we get some people together and clean this up? Well, you think we live trashy? Think it's nasty? You got to be careful not to offend. It's better to teach people how to do something than to just criticize them on doing it. You know, giving a purpose is showing meaning. And when you think about that meaning, when it's neat and clean, the purpose that does the job might not think, well, I just mow the grass. That's all I do. We enjoy it. You know, if you've ever been in the springtime or the summertime and smelt freshly cut grass without ragweed, I can't stand ragweed, it's really nice. And people benefit from that. You know, but when you talk about character education, when you go into a place and everybody treats people in a positive way, nobody's stealing other people's items, nobody's manipulating, nobody's gossiping or slandering or tearing someone down, it becomes a much better environment to be in. You know, a lot of people come to the United States, why? It's safe there. Oh, well, tell me what city that is, because I've lived in a lot of places. You know, I've been in a couple states. I've been through almost every state in the United States, and it can get pretty bad everywhere. You know, I know we throw Chicago out there all the time, but you know, there's murders everywhere. Even here in Abilene, there's murders. Well, you know, the country I live in, it's deadly here. Deadly there too. And I'll give you one example of this purpose. You know, going across borders, it can be intimidating sometimes. But your purpose is to teach people character education. And there can be a lot of people that tell you, hey, it's very dangerous here. They kidnap, they kill, they do this, they do that. And I'm not saying those things don't take place, but that doesn't change your purpose. If it changes your purpose in doing your job, you shouldn't be going. Your job and your goals should be the same. And I'll give you an example. I crossed the border into a place that's considered very dangerous, no problems. Had a great time, met a lot of people who are searching their purpose in life. They really don't know what their purpose is. A lot of people. And I thought, well, I come back across the border, and I always take a deep breath, and I think, whew, I'm back to safety. And 30 miles into my trip back, I got caught in the middle of a high-speed police chase. And I knew it was going to end bad when they passed about 100 miles an hour, and then 1, 2, 3, 10, 12, 15, 20. And I quit counting at 62 police officers chasing. And the strip of road I was on, I'm thinking, the people running from the police must not know this is 62 miles straightaway, and there's nowhere to turn. They're going to have to stay on this stretch of road. And it's not going to end well. And by the time I got to the end of the stretch of road, and I seen bodies all over the road, it didn't end well. Didn't go too well. You know, their purpose, the people that were in that car, they were searching for freedom. But you can't steal it. You know, and freedom isn't just getting across the border and driving as fast as you can. There has to be more of a purpose, and the peaceful solution can show people a purpose in any country. And they can be beneficial. They can enjoy life in any country and succeed. But when you try to achieve your purpose without really thinking it through, and you include danger into it, you know, I read later it was 8 people in that car. And the paper said they received medical attention. And I thought medical attention must have been the hearse coming to pick them up, because the people I drove past were not alive. And it was sad. Even the sheriff told me, he said, you know, if they would have just pulled over, we could have processed them and sent them back. But now there's no sending them back except in a bag. That's it. They had a purpose, but it wasn't thought through very well. We can have purposes, but we have to think it through. You know, and some people consider their lives as meaningless, useless, until they get to this. If I can only get that, my purpose changes. Your value in life and your purpose doesn't change because you've been relocated. Your purpose in life is to be beneficial to others. That's what we should all be. Notice it says everyone has something to offer once again and to contribute to the lives of their family, friends, and society as a whole. And once again, you can do whatever you set your mind to do. That's possible. In this lesson, you will explore that there is value and purpose in life. Standing on the firm foundation of your purpose demonstrates that you accept your life as worthwhile and meaningful. In other words, you accept it has value. And standing on that, of course, it's built upon morality. And speaking of values, turning over here, we want to go to procedure 2, though, because that's where we start this at. So turn back to LP5C and think about this purpose and how blurred it can get and how important it is to have this knowledge, display it through wisdom, and think about how great it can become. When you see people in life that had a purpose, it's always easy to sit back and look at people and think, man, they had a purpose in life and they succeeded. In life, you can see, as I said earlier, some people leave legacies. Some people do things and they start trends, and they're very beneficial to society. And you can see the thoughts, the feelings, and the actions of an individual carry on for many, many years after that person has died and they've buried them. But the purpose they served in life was so important, it encouraged so many other people that not only did their life make a difference in other people's lives, it's almost like they're living in all of those people. And they move forward. And what was one father to one son becomes 10 teachers to 100 students, becomes 100 students to becomes 100 teachers to 1,000 students, and it builds and builds and builds till you have, 10,000 teachers to 2 billion students, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing, as long as you keep that purpose, that focus, and that objective in mind. And who's to say that's not possible? We've seen things like that take place, and they've succeeded. Well, here, turning back to LP5C, in Procedure 3, it says, explain to students that in order to understand that their lives have purpose, they must, once again, there's that word must, recognize that they can make a difference and contribute to the lives of others. So getting ourselves lined up in an order, we can contribute to the lives of others. Tell students that when they contribute their time and abilities to help others, that's their time. That means, yes, we're going to have to take some time out of our lives, miss the football game, so to speak. Take time out of our lives and have the abilities to help others. They can have a positive effect in the lives of their family, friends, society, and someday even the world. And that's the goal of the Peaceful Solution, to help make the world a better place and to help the world to choose to make itself a better place. Notice it says, have students turn to page 88 and 89 in their handbooks to the section entitled Helping Others, Value and Worth. Ask students to list a few ways they help others. Explain to students that their contributions, regardless of how small they might seem, can mean a great deal to someone else. And so turning over here to page 88, and we'll get to that list here shortly. But we want to put into there, when you think about you're talking to teenagers, you're talking about people that usually rake leaves, mow lawns, it's kind of a thing of the past, but I still see newspapers being delivered. You talk about a newspaper boy these days, most students don't have a clue to what you're talking about. A newspaper boy is like, AbileneReporterNews.com or something. It's not back when they used to ride the bicycles and throw out the newspapers. So obviously you have to kind of keep it up to level with how things have changed in technology and society. But here on page 88 it says, have you ever considered how many people you know and see on a regular basis? And obviously the people we live with, we see the most. We see them on a regular basis. The people we work with, we see them a lot. And if we go to school, we see them a lot. Your family, friends, and teachers are only some of the people you communicate and interact with daily. What effect do you have on each other's lives? Think about that. Think about adversity. Think about when communities face challenges and how our attitudes, our reactions to the adversity, how they affect everybody else around us. Like if something breaks, there's no way to fix that. Why? And is it even really broken? Sometimes we think things are broken when life is moving forward. Sometimes we think things are impossible when it just means you got to do more work and you need more people. You just got to band closer together. It's kind of like we said, picking up a tire or a car. Try to change your tire on your car by picking up your car. And then get that little jack out and jack your car up. And it's amazing what that little tool can do if you just use it and follow the directions with it. Use it wrong, it can be very devastating. But as a community, as family, as friends, anything can be achieved. And the way we conduct ourselves in achieving these goals can really affect the lives of others around us. You can either help the purpose in life become clear through your words and actions, or you can start making it very murky to where that person becomes harder and harder and harder for them to see. By consciously making an effort to willingly help and share knowledge with others, you can improve their lives and give meaning and purpose to your own. So it's not just you're doing it for yourself, you're doing it for others. When was the last time you took stock of the ways in which you were helpful? Took stock. In other words, you took a measure. Like buying stocks and bonds, you invest in something. Well, when was the last time you took stock in the ways you were helpful? And, we can think, well, I helped do this, I helped do that. But I want you to think about this. Let's say you help build a house, construction. And you're helping build that house, pour the pad, get some stability to it. You want a firm foundation. You start building the walls, and here comes the person that's in charge of the building of the house, and they say, no, that's not right. I want it done this way. And you start thinking, well, why did he hire me for? He's going to come tell me how to do it, and he's pointing his finger saying this and that. And then we don't do it the way that person wanted it done. But we keep doing it our way. Well, the purpose was to build a house for the owner. That was the purpose. That was the goal. You really need that owner to give you his goal, to remind you of what the goal is. And when we think that we have a better way, and we start criticizing, can you believe that man came out here and told me he didn't want that? And then the workers around are like, well, he's the owner. That's what he said. He's kind of paying the bills, isn't he? He's the one that's going to give us our money at the end of this job. And he's going to pay us according to how well we worked. Sometimes you can get fired off that job because of the way you work. But the peaceful solution teaches people how to work hand in hand. And when I say take stock in being helpful, if you help build the house, but you criticize and complain the whole way through, that's not really being as helpful as you could have been. In fact, it can be detrimental to others. very detrimental to others. So as we build that house, we take stock into how well did we do it? And did we do it in complete unity? And did we do it with everyone having the same goal and thought in sight and moving forward with it? Notice here, it talks about, did you assist your parents or relatives by doing chores or babysitting younger ones? Is your family like many other families in today's society? Then both of your parents probably work during the day, or maybe you live in a single parent family where the responsibility of providing for the family rests upon one person. As a community, things can be done much easier than one person. But notice here, we'll finish up this paragraph. It says, regardless of the size of your family, parents and guardians have many obligations and duties. As young people, you have the ability to contribute to your family's well-being. It might seem as if you are the only person taking out the trash or doing the dishes, but by doing your chores with a pleasant attitude, to the best of your ability, you alleviate some of the stress from your parents and help make your life pleasant, clean, and healthy. And you don't really think about how beneficial cleaning the dishes, mowing the yard, taking out the trash, how beneficial that is until you want to eat something, or until you're walking through the yard and you step on something. You start seeing the benefits of people doing what's considered small, insignificant jobs, is what some people say, where sometimes they become very important, extremely important, when the smallest of things take place. We're going to stop on that part right there. We're going to continue because we're going to rehearse a couple parts in our next class, because once again, as teachers, we're teaching this to youth, but we have to see this as adults. This purpose has to be clear in our minds and in our life to connect with our students on how to make everything a better place. Because even as guidance counselors has told us when we went into schools, I remember a school in Houston we went to, and the principal said, we have people here who really need this program. They fight, they're really hard on each other, and we thought, it must be a troubled class. It was the teachers. It was a whole classroom full of teachers. So our goal is to accomplish alleviating those things from society themselves, because we can all fall into it. So we're going to stop here on page 88. Next class we're going to continue will be on 1013. 1013, that'll be Wednesday at 5:30, and we'll pick up from this point. Once again, thank you for joining us.